Certainly. Here's a fluent and literary English translation of your passage. At that time, began Georges Kervelen, I was living in a furnished room on Rue de Saint-Paris. When my parents decided to send me to Paris to study law, a long discussion ensued over countless details. My annual allowance was set at 2,500 francs, but poor Mama was seized by a worry. She confided to my father. What if he squanders all his money on nonsense and neglects his meals? That could harm his health. Young people are capable of anything. In the end, they resolved to find me a family boarding house, modest but comfortable, where they could pay the monthly fee directly. I had never left Quimper before. I longed for everything a young man typically desires, and I yearned to live freely on my own terms. Neighbors we consulted recommended a fellow Breton, Madame Kergaran, who rented rooms with meals included. My father corresponded with this respectable lady, and one evening I arrived at her place with my suitcase. Madame Kergaran was about 40. She was stout, exceedingly stout, and spoke with the commanding voice of a drill sergeant training recruits. She settled every matter briefly and decisively. Her narrow, almost claustrophobic house, with a single window facing the street on each floor, resembled a staircase of windows, or better yet, a slice of building wedged between two others, like filling in a sandwich. On the second floor lived the landlady and her maid. The third was for cooking and dining. The fourth and fifth housed 4 Breton boarders. I was given 2 rooms on the 6th floor. A dark, corkscrew staircase led to my attic. All day long, Madame Kergaran climbed and descended this spiral without rest, commanding her household like a captain aboard ship. 10 times a day, she entered each room, inspecting everything, barking orders, checking the beds, the clothes, ensuring cleanliness and proper care. Her attentiveness was almost maternal. No, more than maternal. Soon I became acquainted with my 4 fellow countrymen. 2 were studying medicine, the other 2 law. All of them endured the landlady's tyranny with quiet submission, fearing her as a pickpocket fears a watchman. As for me, I was immediately seized by a craving for independence. Rebellion is in my nature. First of all, I declared that I would return home whenever I pleased, for Madame Kergaran had imposed a strict curfew, midnight. Upon hearing this, she fixed her pale eyes on me and replied firmly, "That is out of the question. I will not allow Annette to be woken in the middle of the night, and you have no business wandering about after the appointed hour." I answered stubbornly, "According to the law, madam, you are obliged to open the door for me at any hour of the day or night. Should you refuse, I'll report the incident to the police and spend the night at a hotel at your expense. It's my right. So you must either let me in or terminate the lease. Either open the door or we part ways. The choice is yours." I said this with a smirk, looking her straight in the eye. She was taken aback at first, but soon tried to negotiate. I remained firm, and she relented. We agreed that I would have my own key, on the strict condition that no one else would know. My persistence had a strangely beneficial effect on her. From that moment on, she treated me with unmistakable warmth. She became attentive, considerate, even tender, with a kind of rough-edged affection that I must admit I rather liked. Sometimes, in a burst of mischief, I would kiss her unexpectedly, knowing she'd respond with a resounding slap. If I ducked in time, her hand would whistle past my head like a bullet, and I'd flee, laughing, while she shouted after me, "You scoundrel, I'll remember this." And so we became true friends. But one day, I met a young shop girl on the street. You know how these Parisian romances begin. You're walking to university one morning, and suddenly you see a girl without a hat, strolling arm in arm with a friend before work. Your eyes meet, and you feel that subtle jolt, the one a woman's glance can sometimes provoke. One of life's quiet pleasures lies in that sudden spark of attraction, born of a chance encounter, in that delicate, almost imperceptible seduction to which you surrender instantly, drawn to a being made to charm and be cherished. Whether the feeling becomes passionate or remains fleeting, does it really matter? There's something in her that answers the secret longing for love that lives in you. From the first glance, her face, her lips, her hair, her smile, you're filled with a sweet, intoxicating joy, a vague but tender emotion. It feels as though she's calling to you, as though you've known her forever, as though you understand her thoughts. The next day, you walk the same street at the same hour. You see her again, then again, and again. Finally, you speak, and the romance unfolds along its inevitable path like an illness. By the end of the third week, Emma and I had reached that threshold beyond which comes the fall. It would have happened sooner had I known where we could be alone. Emma lived with her parents and adamantly refused to enter a furnished room. I racked my brain, searching for a solution, a trick, the right moment. At last, I resorted to a desperate plan. I invited her to my place at 11 in the evening, just for a cup of tea. Madame Kergaran usually went to bed at 10. With my key, I could slip in quietly, unnoticed, and an hour or two later, we could leave just as discreetly. Emma agreed, though not without persuasion. The whole day, I was tormented by anxiety. I feared complications, scandal, some absurd disaster. That evening, I went out, stopped at a restaurant, drank 2 cups of coffee and 5 glasses of wine for courage. Then I wandered along Boulevard Saint-Michel. 10 o'clock struck, then 10:30. I headed toward our meeting place. She was waiting. She took my arm, gently, trustingly. We walked toward my building. The closer we came to the door, the more my nerves tightened. I kept thinking, please let Madame Kergaran be asleep. More than once I whispered to Emma, just don't make any noise on the stairs. She laughed. You're really afraid someone will hear us? No, I just don't want to disturb my neighbor. He's seriously ill. And there it was, Rue de Saint-Paris. I approached the house with the same dread one feels entering a dentist's office. The windows were dark. They must be asleep. I exhaled. Carefully, I unlocked the door, let Emma in, closed it behind us, and tiptoed up the stairs, lighting wax matches one by one so she wouldn't stumble. Passing Madame Kergaran's bedroom, I felt my heart pounding. 3rd floor, 4th, 5th. I opened the door to my room. Victory. Certainly. Here's a fluent and literary English translation of the passage, preserving its tone, rhythm, and emotional tension. I didn't dare speak aloud and quietly removed my shoes so as not to make the slightest sound. The tea, brewed over a spirit lamp, was sipped at the edge of the dresser. Then I grew more insistent, more determined, and, as if playing a game, began slowly, step by step, to remove my companion's clothing, piece by piece. She yielded, though not without resistance, blushing, embarrassed, doing everything she could to delay the fateful and enchanting moment. She was down to a short white skirt when, suddenly, the door flew open and Madame Kergaran appeared on the threshold, candle in hand, dressed in an outfit identical to Emma's. I sprang back from the girl and froze, gripped by panic, staring at the 2 women who now stood face to face, silently, intensely. Then the landlady spoke, in a haughty tone I had never heard from her before. "I will not tolerate young women in my house, Monsieur Kervelen." I stammered. "Madame Kergaran, please. Mademoiselle is merely an acquaintance. She came for a cup of tea." "But madam," her expression unchanged, replied, "people don't strip down to their undergarments to drink tea. Kindly escort this young lady out at once." Emma, stunned, burst into tears, covering her face with her skirt. I was utterly lost, not knowing what to say or do. Madame added with unyielding authority, "Help Mademoiselle dress and see her out immediately." Of course, I had no choice. I picked up the dress lying on the floor like a deflated balloon, slipped it over the girl's head, and struggled to fasten and straighten it. Emma helped me, still sobbing, rushing, fumbling, forgetting where her laces and buttons were, while Madame Kergaran stood motionless with a candle, illuminating us like a stern magistrate. Suddenly Emma's movements turned frantic. Seized by an overwhelming urge to flee, she dressed in a frenzy, wrapping, tying, pinning, lacing everything in sight, and without even fastening her shoes, she darted past the landlady and bolted down the stairs. I hurried after her, in slippers, half-dressed, calling, "Mademoiselle, Mademoiselle." I felt I had to say something, anything, but no words came. I caught up with her just as she reached the door and tried to take her hand, but she pushed me away fiercely and whispered through tears, leave me, don't touch me," and she ran out into the street, slamming the door behind her. I turned around. Madame Kergaran was standing on the landing of the second floor. I began climbing the stairs slowly, bracing myself for whatever came next. Her bedroom door was open. She invited me in, her voice cold and firm. "We need to talk, Monsieur Kervelen." I passed her with my head bowed. She placed the candle on the mantel and folded her arms across her broad chest, barely concealed by a thin white blouse. "So this is how it is, Monsieur Kervelen. You've decided my house is a place of ill repute. I had absolutely nothing to be proud of." I muttered, "Oh no, Madame Kergaran, why are you so angry? You know perfectly well what a young man is like." She answered sharply, "I know one thing. I will not tolerate these girls in my house. Do you hear me? I will have respect for my home and the good name of my family. Do you hear me? I will have it." She spoke for no less than 20 minutes, piling one argument on top of another, full of logic and righteous indignation, weighing me down with the authority of her house and showering me with biting reproaches. And I, a man truly, sometimes just an animal, instead of listening, stared at her. I no longer heard a single word or sound. This brigand had a magnificent bosom, firm, snowy white, and full, maybe a little heavy, but so alluring that it sent shivers down my spine. Honestly, I could never have imagined that something like that was hidden under her woolen dress. In her night clothes, she looked 10 years younger, and I suddenly felt strangely, unusually, how can I put it, agitated to the very core. And I found myself before her in the exact same position as a quarter of an hour ago, in my own room. Behind her, in the alcove, I saw the bed. It was half unmade, and a deep indentation in the sheets spoke of the heavy body that had recently rested there. I thought that this bed must be especially cozy and warm, warmer than any other. Why? I don't know. Probably because it had held a body so generous in its forms. What could be more arousing than a rumpled bed? The one before me was intoxicating to look at, causing a nervous tremor in my body. And Madame Kergaran kept talking, but now calmly, like a strict but benevolent mentor, ready to forgive. I mumbled, "Listen, listen, Madame Kergaran, I beg you." When she fell silent, waiting for an answer, I wrapped my arms around her and began to kiss her, greedily, like a man who had been starved. She tried to push me away, turn her head, but without much anger, automatically repeating her usual, "Oh, you scoundrel, scoundrel." U.S. She couldn't finish. I lifted her up and held her close. At times like that, you become incredibly strong, you know? I stumbled against the edge of the bed and collapsed onto it, not letting go of my burden. The bed really was very good and very warm. An hour later, the candle burned down and the hostess got up to light another. Returning to her place beside me, slipping her full, rounded leg under the covers, she said in a voice filled with tenderness, satisfaction, and perhaps even gratitude, "Oh, you scoundrel! You scoundrel!" Ladies and gentlemen, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts and impressions in the comments. I will be happy to chat with you.